Welcome to the fifth video in the quadcopter build series for beginners. Now this is designed to be a quadcopter build that's going to be as simple and straightforward as possible. And the reason it's taken us 5 whole videos to get to the point where we're actually going to start putting things together is the last videos in the series I've talked a lot about making the right choices for the components that you're going to put inside the model that you're about to build. Choosing the right components is really important for a first-time build in particular, because if you make the wrong choices with the components you get, all you're going to do is get frustrated. It's going to be really hard to build, really hard to tune, hard to troubleshoot, and hard to fix when it goes wrong, and you'll just give up the whole thing as a bad job. So all of the links for the pieces that I'm using are down below, but in this one we're going to focus on what we need to do to put the power system together. So that's connect the motors to the ESCs and then also probably put the power lead on the back as well so that we can plug a battery in later on the series. Now I think it's worthwhile talking a little bit about ESCs, or electronic speed controllers. These are little computers in their own right, and their job is to take the battery power, the DC voltage from the battery that we plug into the quadcopter, and deliver it to the different windings in the motor in a sequenced way to make the motor rotate. The ESC is actually a very clever little piece of technology because it's not only turning the motor in direct proportion to the amount of throttle signal that it's receiving, it's also sensing via the magnetic pulses coming back from the unenergized parts of the motor where the rotating parts are, so it can make sure that it's energizing and creating the magnetic fields inside the motor needed to turn at exactly the right time. Now, there's lots of debate about whether the best way to build a quadcopter is to have separate ESCs out on the arms like we've done in previous builds. That puts the ESCs out on the arms in lots of airflow to help keep them cool. It also means if they do accidentally damage an ESC, then you can just have to replace the one. You don't have to take your entire quadcopter apart. However, out there on the arms, that means that the mass isn't all centrally located, and it also means that in the event of something really nasty happening to the arm, or the prop or the motor, there's a chance that that ESC is going to get caught and damaged as well. Now, everyone has their own dearly held opinion of which is better. I actually build with both depending on the type of model frame that we're going to use. But we are going to use this 4-in-1 setup. So on this little board here that we're going to put in the heart of the quadcopter are actually 4 ESCs, and those are going to run the motors. So all we have to do is connect the motor wires up to the pads on the edge of this. We're going to have to do a little bit of soldering, and I'll talk about that in a second, and that is the connections done. If you're going to put ESCs out on the arms, then typically what you do is then you connect the motors to the ESCs, and then out of those ESCs there's 2 power wires that need connected to some kind of power distribution board, and a signal and a ground as well. But I'd refer you to Quadcopter Build Series 7. It's not designed for beginners, but it shows how I've connected those up. But this one we're going for simplicity. Can I run a motor that's only going to run 20 amps with a 40 amp speed controller? And the answer is yes, you can. In fact, I'd always recommend that you have the capacity, maximum capacity of your ESC at a higher rating than the amperage that you expect the motor to pull. And again, if you're not sure about what amperage the motor is going to pull, see the previous videos where we talked about motor, prop, and ESC selection. And the reason for that is the motor will only ever pull the amount of amps that it needs to deliver the power and thrust that you're asking of it. And what you're doing is making sure that by using an ESC that has a higher rating is that you're never running the ESC at or close to 100%. It means the ESC isn't getting as stressed, and if the manufacturer has been a little bit adventurous with the rating and it actually won't do 35 amps, it'll do 32, then by actually putting one with a slightly higher rating in, you're not going to have a problem because you need 35 amps of power. So what tools are we going to need for this bit of the build? So the first thing, of course, is we're going to need a soldering iron. Now, my advice with the soldering iron is like FPV goggles, it's like radios, it's like other bits and pieces. They tend to be investments in the hobby. And if you're going to be getting into building or repairing quadcopters, because unfortunately you're going to crash this thing once you've built it, and because you know how it went together, you will be able to repair it a lot easier too, you're going to have to start unsoldering and soldering things up. So getting a good quality soldering iron, it might cost a little bit of money, but you're probably going to have it for a long time. This one here is a Weller soldering iron, and I've had it for 30 years. So me and this iron have seen an awful lot of builds, not just in quadcopters, but in car electronics, all kinds of stuff. So this has been a very loyal companion. The reason that it's lasted so long is it has interchangeable tips, and I have a number of size tips for this. I have this big one here that I use for power soldering connections. That big surface area gets a lot of heat into the solder joint so that I can get the molten solder to work and to connect everything up quite quickly. I also have much smaller tips for when I'm doing smaller soldering jobs, and that will happen in the next video. It also means that when the tips start to wear out, you can just replace them, because over time the tips will get pitted and oxidized, and you'll find that you're struggling to do a good soldering job. At that point, if you've got a little bit of experience for soldering, it's probably not you. Might be, but it probably isn't, and it's probably time to replace the tip. The other thing you need, of course, is solder. Go for lead solder, the solder that actually has lead inside. There are lead-free solders, but I am not a fan at all. This stuff is slightly less environmentally friendly, but it works so much better. The way it flows and also the way it hardens when you remove heat makes these kind of jobs much easier, and it also sets up with a beautiful glossy finish that to me looks like a proper solder joint. With a non-lead based solder, even if you do a really good joint, it always ends up looking hazy, and I'm afraid from my classically trained electronics brain, it just looks like a really crappy solder joint. Most solders will have something called a rosin core, and that is a flux that's inside, and that flux's job is to clean the area that you're about to use. So as you're soldering, it's actually also cleaning the contacts. You can also use something like a flux pen. I tend to put a little dab of flux out of this pen onto big contacts just to make sure that the solder is adhering beautifully to all of the connections and it's not going to pop off, or we're not going to end up with what's called a dry solder joint, where although it looks good, it actually isn't making a great electrical connection. Other couple of things you'll need some heat shrink so that you can cover up any wires that you bind together to make sure that they don't touch anything that they shouldn't be doing. You're going to need some snips to cut the wire. I'd recommend something like these little sharp numbers. You can use the side of standard pliers and that will work great if you haven't got anything else, but these little snips are fab for also getting into places when you do use things like cable ties. You need to snip the ends off. You'll need some wire strippers. I like these manual types, but automatic ones will work fine too. And also need a lot of patience and practice. If you've never done any soldering before, don't make the first soldering joint the one that you're trying to do on your quadcopter. Get some wire together, have a play, and get used to the process of soldering and make sure you can use it. Now, to put the motors on this model, we are going to have a little bit of a problem. Some motors come with really long wires on them. Unfortunately, these BR2507Ss, these race stars that I want to use on this model, unfortunately the wires will not go into the middle. So we have a couple of options about how we can extend the wires from where they are now to be able to reach the ESC pads on the sides of this 4-in-1 ESC that we're going to use. Now this is 20 gauge wire that's on these motors, so we could just buy some more silicon covered 20 gauge wire. The reason you want silicon covered wire is that when you use the soldering iron on the ends, you're not going to melt the insulation back. Cheap wire tend to have things like PVC and other things on it, and that stuff unfortunately melts, so you tend to find you're doing the soldering, you can kind of watch the plastic give up and kind of work its way back from the soldering joint. Or we could use something like this. These are actually from Team Black Sheep. These are things called race wires, and we could kind of cut the wire and extend them. The idea with this is that rather than have the ESC out the arm, you have this little flat pad, and it also means that if you have a blade strike in the event of a crash, something catches your arm, it isn't cutting through the wires or destroying your ESC. These are in the place as well. Now, I'm not going to use these race wire things on this. I'm just going to extend the wires that are on the motors with this 20 gauge silicon covered wire that I've got from good old eBay. Bought 5 meters, it's going to last me for quite a few builds, but you try and get the same size as wire on your motor. You'll tend to find if you look on the wires that are on the motors that you get, you'll be able to see the wire gauge printed on the side. So to do the soldering, first thing to do is you need to strip the ends of the wires that you're going to solder together, and I would then twist the wires to make sure that you haven't got any loose strands stuck out the side. and then pre-tin them, and that's basically just put a little bit of solder on the end with your soldering iron and just hold it there for a second until you can see it sink in between the individual strands. Once you've done that, then I would pre-tin the other side. Now I like to pre-tin the pads on the ESCs and work my way around. Again, the way I tend to do it, put a little dab of flux on each of the pads, and then with the large soldering iron tip, I then flow a pool of solder into each of the places that I want to use. Now I'm going to have to put these extra pieces onto the wire here and extend them. So all I'm going to do is just strip a little bit more insulation off the ends of the motors. I'm going to then add some extension pieces, just cut them and solder each end, flow those pieces together, and then slide a little bit of heat shrink over the top and just run the edge of the solder iron around the heat shrink to keep it in place. Now that's actually going to be covered in the final build by a piece of insulation tape around the whole arm, so you're not even going to see that join. And then all it is a case of doing is just then heating that pool of solder up with the soldering iron tip and then dipping the pre-tinned end in. You'll see it all kind of flow together. As soon as you see that, keep that wire nice and still, remove the soldering iron, and that nice solder that you're using will go solid. And just wait a second and then you can let go, and that's the soldering joint done. So now that's the power system all together. That's already starting to look a little bit like a quadcopter, isn't it? Thing to talk about here is also how we have mounted this bottom board. We don't want that touching the bottom of the case. So normally what you use is things like nylon, M3 nylon PCB standoffs, because that will give us a little bit of space underneath. We're going to put the battery on top of this, so we don't need to worry about clearance. I find buying a kit like this can come in very handy. It's all different sizes of the M3 nylon PCB standoffs and screws and other bits and pieces. And if you don't get what you need in the kit, because not all kits come with it, then you can just make up your own little bits and pieces to make sure that nothing is touching at the bottom. And the really nice thing about this frame is that when you put it together, the mounts for the PCB and the flight controller are accessible from the bottom, so you can take things off and put things on pretty easily too. So the power connection on this kind of model, I would probably use 12 gauge wire. The wacky thing is that the smaller the number of the gauge of wire, the actual bigger the wire is. So 12 gauge wire is actually bigger than 14 gauge wire, which seems really weird and counterintuitive. So that's why the 20 gauge wire that we've used on the motors is really quite small. And then you have things like 14 gauge wire I'd use for kind of low power things, but something like 12 gauge wire would be great for this. And again, we're going to do exactly the same thing for the soldering. We're going to strip the ends of the wire, we're going to pre-tin them, we're going to make sure that those pads on the ESC board that we're using have two nice shiny pools of solder on there. Again, probably a dab of flux wouldn't hurt. And then melt those pads of solder, dip the tinned wire into it, and then remove the heat and let the solder set up. So that's a lot of the really hard work done for the power system. The last thing I do, just to check that you haven't made any mistakes, is to grab your ohm meter. The ohm meter is there to check that you haven't got any dead shorts across the input. There are checks and balances that we can do later on that we'll do when we actually get to setting up Betaflight and testing the motors and doing things like that. But for now, I just pop the two prongs of your ohm meter across the two power pins of the XT60 connector and just make sure that you're not reading a very low resistance. If you are, then you've probably made a mistake and something's probably touching the carbon fiber, or you might have bridged a couple of pads somewhere accidentally with a little bit of solder that you didn't mean to. Chances are it's probably fine, and we're ready to move on to the next stage. Next time, we'll actually look at the radio and also setting up the model and binding to the receiver and plugging the receiver into the flight controller. And once we've got that, we can do the basic setting with Betaflight, and before we start any of the FPV gear or any of that gubbins, we could actually take it out and give it a quick test hover. So join me for the next videos in this series where we'll continue to build this little monster out and ultimately have it flying around. If you found that video useful or like the content, then please hit the like and subscribe button down below. If you want to go the extra step, you can become a Patreon of the Painless 360 channel and help provide support for what I do here all the videos created here are put into playlists. So if you're interested in a particular topic, have a look at the playlist, and they all are organized in there to make them easier to use. If you're not sure if there's a video for your particular problem or topic you want to know more about, then add Painless360 to the Google search term that you're interested in, and that should find the video, article or content about the particular thing that you're interested in having a look at.